Hey, this is the MOG Summer Pain coming at you from the MOG Gaming channel. Gonna be doing some Diablo 3 content for this video. Gonna be showing off my Wastes Barb, showing off my build, and just seeing how far I can push it in greater rifts. So, we got the pretty standard waist set for everything but the boots, which is Immortal King. Then we're doing the belt and the hammer of the boulder breaker for our mighty weapon. And I should note that this is the old boulder breaker before it got the plus 60% to ancient damage. So that's why it doesn't have that on it. Using convention of elements, which is, I believe, very important to the build, and esoteric. We got Ring of Royal Grandeur, which is completely necessary for this build to work with a Tega, because Tega is really good for the build. Reaper Wraps to help keep your rage up, and a Hellfire Amulet. I have this just purely for damage, and with the Rampage passive, I'm able to gain an extra defensive passive, which I really like. So for skills, Whirlwind with Blood Funnel, completely standard. Rend with Mutilate, taking Rend with the physical damage one, with Bloodbath was what I was using before, but you don't really notice it spreading to other mobs at all, because you end up either killing them so quick, or they just take too long to die anyways, and it just goes away before it does anything meaningful damage. So you do it with Mutilate instead, which gives you 10% increased damage, so every 5 seconds just you rend, you 10% more damage for that 5 seconds. Swords in the Plowshare for Battle Rage, pretty standard, so your crits can drop health globes, which is pretty important for keeping rage up. Wrath of Berserker is completely necessary because you have it up all the time, now using 3 pieces of Immortal Kings. And then I take Striding Giant for reduced damage. For reduced damage taken, sorry. Because that's really necessary for the higher rifts. Warcry with Impunity, just reduce damage. Call of the Ancients, because you have them up all the time, and these ones give you Fury. So you don't need to worry about any kind of Fury generation between this and Battle Rage. You'll have Fury up all the time. What I have done though is I take Superstition for damage reduction, and this also generates Fury. Ruthless, because it helps finish off Rift Boss. It helps you finish off the Rift Boss and any kind of elites really easily. Then we have Tough as Nails for more damage reduction, and then of course Nerves of Steel, because it's only second life passes that we get, so kind of stuck with it. So pretty much the basics of this build is you're gonna activate your War Cry, activate Battle Rage, call the Ancients, and then Berserker, and then just hold Shift, and then like have my will on left click, hold left click, and you just do that forever. And every once in a while, every 5 seconds, you rend, and that'll help reduce the cooldown of Wrath Berserker, so that can stay up all the time. And the only other thing you need to worry about is your convention of elements here. So you're not going to worry about it too much. Just every 5 seconds, do your rend like normal. Except when it goes all the way through and it gets down to lightning. And just before this lightning one is done, so at about 2 seconds or 1 second left, you're going to rend, so that for the entire duration of the physical buff, you do not need to rend. So that you can just sit there and hold the whirlwind to get maximum damage off. So we're going to go do this build. I'm going to show you how it's done. It is a fairly simple build. Not really a lot of thought here, but it can push really far into greater as long as you're careful.
These enemies defy all reason.
And you can get killed very easily. If you stand in any kind of explosions, chains, lightning will kill you really quickly. But it's every 5 seconds, you're just going to make sure to keep up your rend. Just make sure to stay on top of it. And whenever Berserker comes back up, you got to make sure to activate the Berserker. Because not only is it damage increase, but it reduces the damage that you take, and it increases your movement speed. And while the movement speed isn't too important, it can help you get in between groups a lot easier. So when you're running ends like this, it's a little bit easier to get back. Just constantly keep your shouts up, because every time you do Battle Rage, it's going to reduce the cooldown of Berserker Rage by a little bit. And then the other shout will just help you keep up your rage up a little bit more. Typically, these bigger things don't really have to worry about it. I mean, you're really here looking for the bigger groups. Especially with your Whirlwinds going off from the Whirlwind set, you're not really going to be worried about trying to kill these bigger guys if they're not elites. They'll either follow you and die, or you'll just move on to a bigger group and you'll make up a lot more time.
Not enough fury.
Oop, I ended up running out. It's the only problem with the build that I'm running right now. If things die too quick, you don't, your ancients don't hit, and you don't generate globes from hitting them and critting. So rock the passive. So, you know what I mean? Like, you can die really easily, especially if you don't keep Berserker up. If you don't keep your Wrath of Berserker up, then you're going to die really quick in this build. It's the reason why it has the 50% damage reduction. It's pretty much crucial in this build. I've seen a lot of people run the 50% more damage and the Berserker Rage passive, but as you can clearly see, I do not have max rage. And I need the health way more than I need the damage. Build still has a lot more tweaking left to do. But this does good enough. So as you can see, we're spinning, and you've probably noticed we're keeping the Taeguk stacks up. And every time a stack goes up, we're getting increased damage, and we're getting increased armor, which is more toughness. You tend to lose it, or at least I do with my internet connection, I tend to lose it in between zones, which I think hurts this build a little bit. Because if there's anything big in front of that door, I'm just going to fall over. And as you can see, it's really important to make sure that you never try to rend when you have the physical damage buff from Dimension. The 10% damage and the time you lose whirlwinding is not worth it at all. And besides, because cold comes up right after, you can rend right as the cold buff starts and get the rend in for the full duration for the increased 20% more damage. And I'm being silly here. You really don't want to try to run on the dead ends like that if you don't have to. The goal here is to make as much time off as possible between elite packs. As you can see here, with everything procced on me and full Taeguk stacks, I'm sitting at 3.3 million damage and 269 more toughness. But every time you whirlwind, you lose a lot of protection. The set gives you protection when you're whirlwinding and stuff. I mean, really the most difficult part about this build is remembering to keep proccing Berserker. And to remember to try not to rend while to keep up rends every 5 seconds, and to try not to rend while you're having your physical buff up. And for when there's no groups like that, you just kind of tap your whirlwind, because you want to keep the Taeguk stacks up because it's more damage. But you don't want to hold it because you don't want to run out of rage, especially when I don't have the passive to generate rage, Unforgiving, generate rage over time. And watching this, probably why watching me make a lot of mistakes. I don't claim to do this build perfect, nor am I doing the best at it. But this build will do good enough to get you up to greater at 50, which I think my highest is like 49, without even trying. So a build like this or a build similar to this will get you pretty high. High enough to upgrade your gems, way past 25 at least, which to me is all that's really important. As you probably see now, because we acquired the shield buff and the pylon, I can't see where my stacks are at. Where my ring buff is at, which really sucks. If you're good enough, if you're a lot better than me, you could probably keep those timers memorized. I think the only timer I have memorized is the Ren one because it's a little bit simpler, but I don't really have the Dimension one memorized. It's probably something I need to do. I think if you don't think you're getting enough rage, because you can see me dipping kind of low when I'm running through mobs like this, if you experience that you're not getting enough rage, you could always switch out the non-physical damage protection one that generates rage when you're hit from an elemental attack or ranged attack. You can switch that out for the one that just generates fury over time. I found it to just be overkill, Like, I still wasn't at max fury all the time. But I ended up having just too much. And I could just switch it out for that, and I feel comfortable right now. Like, especially on this boss, like, I'm not running out of fury. So the only time you're really gonna notice not having the Unforgiving passive is when we're running between groups like this. And that's pretty easy to solve by just trying to manage your rage in between groups. You want to keep the take-up stacks up, but you don't want to just hold W. I mean, hold your woodland. You don't have to. So I won't be able to show you too much moving on this one. A higher rips, I do actually need to move out of chains and like those frozen. Because the damage goes up exponentially, so later on, in the later rips, those really start to hurt. But for these lower ones, I don't even notice.
Guide my hand.
You can see I'm starting to dip pretty low. I mean, you also want to use your shout. If you really have to, you can. I'm moving a lot forward more. As you know, this rolling behind me will do most of my damage. In fact, that's probably 90% of your damage is from those whirlwinds. So I tend to just leave things behind me to get killed by the whirlwinds. But another thing you can do is if you want to do this exact build, if you find yourself running out of rage too much, is just hang back. Try to get some extra hits in to generate globes and let your ancients get some damage in to generate fury.
The Rift Guardian is here.
Kinda sucks because I missed the entire physical stuff from convention, but it'll be up soon enough. So like I said, you wait till the very end, rend, and then you don't have to worry about it for this whole time. Right, Tal, I'm still not that good at it. So it's a lot of waiting. Especially for these Rift bosses, you don't really do much until you get that buff. But I think you do enough damage just to chip them down at least a little bit. I mean, obviously that 200% is for most of your damage you can come from. So that's why I feel like it's essential to build. I feel like it's a lot better than Skullgrass, because Skullgrass does skill damage, which applies before all of your multipliers, where this is elemental, so it applies after some of them. At least as far as I understand it. I'm gonna be honest, I've never tried Skullgrass, but I've been told it's pretty terrible. Because of the reasons I just said. As you can tell, he's trying. I'm not moving out any of his stuff. We're just trying to keep the damage on him. The health ropes from your Battle Rage passive will help give you some little heals. For my legendary potion, I'm using the life per hit one. Just help me out a little bit so if I start getting pretty low. To help keep me popped up. But yeah, we're using life per hit one. That was pretty simple. It's not too difficult. This build typically doesn't get too difficult until around 49-50. And then I either have to start really getting good at moving out of stuff or be prepared to get one-shotted. So that's it for today, folks, for this game. Maybe I'll do some more of this for my other ones. I got some other builds I'd like to show off and just, show people what I've been able to do with them. But until next time, this is MOG, still a pain. I'm out.